In the remote town of Silverwood, Connecticut, a new family had just moved into a quaint old house on the edge of the woods. The Wilsons were looking forward to a fresh start after a difficult few years. Unbeknownst to them, the house they had chosen had a history, one steeped in mystery, tragedy, and the lingering presence of something far darker than they could ever imagine. Buried in the attic, amidst decades of forgotten belongings, lay an old doll with bright red hair and a stitched-on smile, Annabelle. The Wilson family consisted of Sarah, her husband Tom, and their two children, Lily and Ben. The house had been a bargain, a fixer-upper with plenty of potential. As they settled in, the family grew fond of their new home. It was spacious, creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and large windows that let in the sunlight. But from the very beginning, something felt off. Lily, the youngest of the Wilsons, was the first to find the doll. While exploring the dusty attic one afternoon, she stumbled upon a small wooden chest tucked away in a corner. Inside, wrapped in old newspaper, was Annabelle. The doll's button eyes seemed to gleam as Lily lifted it out of the chest. Without a second thought, she brought the doll downstairs to her room, excited to add it to her collection. At first, Sarah didn't think much of it. Lily loved dolls, and Annabelle, though a bit worn, was just another addition. But that night, as she tucked Lily into bed, Sarah felt an inexplicable unease. The doll, sitting in the corner of Lily's room, seemed to be watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. She dismissed it as her imagination, kissed Lily goodnight, and left the room. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen around the house. Objects would move on their own. Doors would creak open in the dead of night, and the air seemed to grow colder, even though it was the middle of summer. Sarah began to notice that Lily's behavior was changing as well. The once cheerful and lively girl had become withdrawn, spending hours in her room, whispering to her new doll. One evening, as Sarah was cleaning the house, she heard Lily talking in her room. First, she assumed her daughter was playing make-believe, but as she approached the door, she realized that Lily wasn't talking to herself. She was having a conversation. The other voice, though soft and faint, was unmistakably real. Sarah burst into the room, but there was no one else there. Lily was sitting on her bed, holding Annabelle, a serene smile on her face. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Annabelle," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "She tells me things." Sarah's blood ran cold. She took the doll from Lily, intending to put it back in the attic, but as soon as she touched it, a sharp pain shot through her hand, causing her to drop it. The doll landed on the floor, its expression unchanged. Sarah could have sworn its eyes gleamed with malice. Sarah knew she needed answers. She began to dig into the history of the house and the surrounding area. What she found shocked her. The previous owners of the house, the Robinsons, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the early 1950s. According to local lore, the family had been plagued by strange occurrences, culminating in their unexplained vanishing one night, leaving the house abandoned until it was sold years later. But it wasn't just the Robinsons. Other families in Silverwood had reported similar experiences: disembodied voices, objects moving on their own, and the sudden onset of illnesses. All these incidents had one common thread. They occurred after an old, raggedy doll was brought into the home. The doll was believed to be cursed, but no one knew where it had come from or how it had ended up in the attic of the Wilsons' new home. Desperate, Sarah reached out to the town's historian, an elderly man named Mr. Albright. He told her of an old, forgotten legend. Annabelle was said to be the doll of a young girl who had died tragically in the late 1800s. The girl, Abigail, had been the victim of a cruel prank by local children. The prank had gone horribly wrong, resulting in her death. Consumed by guilt, the children involved in the prank were said to have used dark magic to transfer Abigail's spirit into her favorite doll, hoping to atone for their sins. The magic had twisted the girl's spirit, turning it into something dark and vengeful. Annabelle had been passed from family to family, leaving a trail of misery and death in her wake. Those who encountered her were either driven to madness or vanished without a trace, as if the doll were feeding on their fear and despair. As Sarah delved deeper into the history of the doll, the occurrences at home grew more sinister. Tom, who had initially dismissed her concerns as superstition, could no longer ignore the evidence. He, too, began to experience the strange phenomena: shadowy figures lurking in the corners of rooms, cold spots that followed him from room to room, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Lily, meanwhile, grew increasingly attached to Annabelle. She refused to be separated from the doll, and when Sarah or Tom tried to take it away, she would scream and cry inconsolably. Her once bright eyes now seemed distant, as if she were under some kind of spell. One night, Sarah awoke to the sound of whispering coming from Lily's room. She shook Tom awake, and the two of them rushed to their daughter's room. What they found was chilling. Lily was sitting on her bed, eyes closed, as if in a trance. Annabelle was perched on her lap, and around them, a circle of flickering candles had been lit. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls, though there was no one else in the room. Tom tried to enter the room, but an invisible force slammed the door shut, trapping Sarah and Lily inside. The temperature plummeted, and Sarah could see her breath in the air. She grabbed Lily, trying to wake her. The girl remained unresponsive. The doll's eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light, and the whispers reached a deafening crescendo. Desperate, Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed the doll and threw it into the fireplace in the corner of the room. The moment the flames touched the doll, a piercing scream filled the house, shaking the walls and shattering windows. The candles were extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, the doll was gone, leaving behind only a pile of ash and a lingering sense of dread. The next morning, Lily awoke as if nothing had happened. She had no memory of the events of the previous night, and Annabelle was nowhere to be found. Sarah hoped that burning the doll had put an end to the nightmare, but deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Later that day, as Tom was clearing the debris from the broken windows, he found something disturbing. Amid the shattered glass was a piece of fabric, red, torn, and unmistakably part of Annabelle's dress. The doll was not gone, she was still out there, waiting. That night, the Wilsons decided to leave the house. They packed what they could and drove to a nearby hotel, intending to figure out their next steps in the morning. But as they entered their hotel room, they were met with a horrifying sight. Annabelle was sitting on the bed, her button eyes staring directly at them, her smile more sinister than ever. Tom grabbed the doll and drove to the edge of the Silverwood forest, intending to bury it where no one would ever find it. As he dug the hole, the air around him grew thick with fog, and he heard the faint sound of children's laughter echoing through the trees. The laughter grew louder, more malicious, as he threw the doll into the ground and covered it with dirt. As he finished, a strong gust of wind blew through the trees, and the laughter stopped. Tom returned to the hotel, exhausted but hopeful that they had finally rid themselves of the cursed doll. But the moment he walked into the room, he knew it wasn't over. Annabelle was sitting in the corner, untouched by the dirt, eyes fixed on him. Realizing that the doll could not be destroyed by conventional means, the Wilsons sought the help of a local priest, Father Andrews, who had experience with exorcisms. He agreed to help, though he warned them that Annabelle was no ordinary doll. She was a vessel for something much darker, something that would not be easily banished. The exorcism took place in the woods, under the cover of night. Father Andrews recited prayers and invoked holy rituals, but the doll fought back with an unseen force. Trees groaned as if they were alive, the ground trembled, and the wind howled through the forest, carrying with it the faint sounds of screams. Father Andrews realized that the only way to stop Annabelle was to break the original curse that had bound Abigail's spirit to the doll. Called upon the children's spirits, asking for their forgiveness and offering a prayer to release Abigail from her torment. The ground beneath them began to shake violently, and Annabelle's eyes glowed with an intense, fiery light. In a final, desperate move, Father Andrews took the doll and plunged it into a nearby river, holding it under the water as he continued to pray. The water bubbled and churned as if boiling, and a terrible scream echoed through the woods, shaking the very earth. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the commotion stopped. The water became still, and the night grew silent. Father Andrews collapsed, exhausted but alive. The doll was gone, submerged in the depths of the river. Sarah, Tom, and Lily stood in stunned silence, unsure if the nightmare was truly over. The Wilsons returned to their home in Silverwood, hoping to rebuild their lives. The house, once filled with fear, now seemed peaceful. The strange occurrences stopped, and Lily slowly returned to her old self. But Sarah knew that the darkness surrounding Annabelle had not been completely vanquished. The doll might have been taken by the river, but its curse was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Years later, a group of children playing by the river discovered an old, waterlogged doll tangled in the roots of a tree. Its red hair was faded, button eyes dull, but its smile remained, twisted and sinister. One of the children picked it up, and as they walked away, the wind carried a faint, eerie laugh through the trees, echoing with the promise of more terror to come. And so, the legend of Annabelle lived on. A curse that could never truly be broken, a darkness that would haunt those who dared to cross its path.